Marcus Ashford's hands trembled as he stared at the laptop screen in his private office, the glow illuminating his face in the darkness. The security notification had seemed routine, just another motion alert from his smart home system. But what he saw in the frozen frame made his blood turn to ice. His business partner and closest friend, Julian, standing in his master bedroom doorway at 2:47 a.m., being pulled inside by a woman wearing his wife's silk robe. Welcome to Stories by Jason. If you're settled in and ready for a good story, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I've got another exciting story coming your way tomorrow, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. Thank you so much for the love and support. You're truly appreciated, and I'm so grateful to have you here with me. Marcus Ashford didn't believe in coincidences. In his world, a world of billion-dollar acquisitions, hostile takeovers, and zero-sum negotiations, coincidences were simply patterns you hadn't yet recognized. Random chance was what weak men blamed when they failed to see the knife before it entered their back. So when his phone buzzed with a security alert at 11:47 p.m. Tokyo time, he didn't dismiss it as a glitch. The Peninsula Hotel suite was silent except for the ambient hum of the city 20 floors below. Marcus had been reviewing quarterly projections for his latest venture, a biotech firm he was preparing to acquire and strip for parts. The numbers were good. The strategy was flawless. Everything in his empire ran with mechanical precision because he demanded nothing less. He picked up his phone, expecting to see a notification about a delivery at his Malibu estate or perhaps the cleaning service arriving early. Instead, the security app displayed a motion alert from his bedroom wing, triggered by the hallway camera outside his master suite. His master suite. At 2:47 a.m. California time. Victoria should have been asleep. She'd texted him hours ago, a brief, perfunctory message that she was turning in early, that the children were with her sister for the weekend, that she missed him. He'd sent back a single word, tomorrow. Marcus tapped the notification, and the app opened to a frozen frame from the live feed. His blood didn't run cold. Marcus Ashford's blood never ran cold. He'd spent 20 years training himself to view emotion as a weakness, a tool others used against you, a liability in a world where hesitation meant destruction. But what he felt in that moment was something close to what other men might call shock, transformed instantly into the frigid calculation that had made him one of the most feared businessmen in Silicon Valley. The frame showed his bedroom door, slightly ajar. A woman's silhouette was visible in the doorway, backlit by the soft glow of the bedroom lamps. She wore a silk robe, ivory-colored, the one he'd bought her in Paris 2 years ago. Her posture was relaxed, intimate, welcoming. And standing in the hallway, his hand reaching toward her waist, was Julian Cross. Marcus stared at the screen for exactly 3 seconds. Then he tapped to view the live feed. The image resolved into full motion. Victoria's face was now visible, tilted upward, her expression soft in a way Marcus couldn't remember seeing in years. Julian's hand slid around her waist, pulling her closer. She rose on her toes, her fingers threading through his hair, and they kissed, not the frantic, guilty kiss of a forbidden moment, but the comfortable, familiar kiss of two people who had done this many times before. Then Victoria stepped backward, pulling Julian into the bedroom, and the door closed. Marcus set his phone down on the mahogany desk with precise, deliberate care. His reflection stared back at him from the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Tokyo Bay, a ghostly double in the glass. 42 years old, silver threading through his dark hair, the sharp angles of his face that board members had learned meant someone was about to be destroyed. Julian Cross. His business partner of 15 years. The man who'd pitched him in a coffee shop in Palo Alto when they were both 27, hungry and brilliant and convinced they could reshape the tech industry. The man who'd been his best man at his wedding. The godfather to his children. The person Marcus had trusted with access to everything. His company, his home, his family. The person who was, at this very moment, in Marcus's bed with Marcus's wife. Most men would have called immediately, would have screamed, would have booked the next flight home to catch them in the act. Marcus did none of these things. Instead, he opened his laptop and navigated to the comprehensive security system he'd installed throughout his properties. It was a system Julian himself had recommended 3 years ago. Top-of-the-line surveillance with cloud backup, facial recognition, and AI-driven monitoring. You can't be too careful, Julian had said, not at your level of wealth. Marcus almost smiled at the memory. Almost. He pulled up the historical footage from the bedroom camera, the one hidden in the smoke detector that Victoria didn't know existed. The camera Julian didn't know existed, because Marcus had installed it himself 6 months ago, Not out of suspicion but out of the same instinct that made him read every contract 3 times and never enter a negotiation without knowing his opponent's leverage. Trust, but verify. Always verify. The footage rolled backward, 3 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours. Then to yesterday. And the day before. The pattern emerged like a spreadsheet revealing financial fraud. Julian's car appearing in the driveway within an hour of Marcus leaving for the airport. Julian entering through the front door, he had a key of course. He was family and heading directly upstairs. The bedroom door closing. Hours passing. Julian leaving before dawn, before the neighbors would wake, before anyone would notice. Marcus scrolled back further. 2 weeks ago, when he'd been in New York. A month ago, during his London trip. 3 months ago, while he was at a tech conference in Austin. Every trip. Every absence. Like clockwork. He pulled up the audio files. The system recorded everything, though he'd never bothered to listen before. Now he put in his earbuds and pressed play on a file from 2 weeks ago. Victoria's voice, breathless. God, I've missed you. 3 days felt like forever. Julian's laugh, low and intimate. Your husband's flight doesn't land until tomorrow morning. We have all night. I keep thinking about what you said last time. About us. About finally. Not yet. We have to be smart. Patient. I'm tired of being patient, Julian. I'm tired of pretending. I know, baby. I know. But it has to be perfect. He can't suspect anything. Marcus stopped the recording. He closed the laptop and stood, walking to the window. Tokyo sprawled below him, millions of lights representing millions of lives, none of which mattered in this moment. His mind worked through the problem with the same cold efficiency he applied to every challenge. Emotion was irrelevant. Betrayal was simply information. The question wasn't why they'd done it. People were predictable, and greed and desire explained most human behavior. The question was what to do with the information. A divorce would be expensive, messy, public. Victoria would get half of everything in California's community property system, and Julian owned 30% of their company. The optics would be devastating. The board would panic. Competitors would sense weakness. Stock prices would crater. A divorce was the emotional response, the response of a man who led with his heart instead of his head. Marcus had spent his entire adult life building an empire, and he hadn't done it by being emotional. He'd done it by being ruthless. By seeing 3 moves ahead. By turning every disadvantage into leverage. If Victoria and Julian wanted to betray him, he would let them. He would document everything. He would gather evidence so overwhelming, so comprehensive, that when the time came to act, they would have no defense, no escape, no mercy. He would turn their betrayal into the weapon that destroyed them. Marcus returned to his desk and opened a secure note-taking app. He began typing, his fingers moving across the keyboard with mechanical precision. Evidence log, Day 1. Subjects, Victoria Ashford, wife, Julian Cross, business partner. Status, active surveillance initiated. Timeline, affair appears to be ongoing for minimum 3 to 4 months, possibly longer. Next steps, install additional surveillance. Engage private investigator. Consult with attorney, confidential. Document all interactions. Maintain normal behavior. Do not alert subjects. Objective, total asset protection. Complete strategic advantage. He added one more line. Personal note, trust is a weakness. This will never happen again. Marcus sent the file to his encrypted cloud storage, then cleared his recent activity. His phone buzzed, a text from Victoria. Missing you. Can't wait until you're home. Love you. He stared at the message for a long moment. Then he typed back, miss you too. See you soon. He hit send and set the phone aside. The rest of the Tokyo meeting could wait. Marcus opened his laptop again and began making a list of security contractors, private investigators, and forensic accountants, people who worked in the shadows, who understood that information was power, who could gather evidence without leaving fingerprints. By the time the sun rose over Tokyo Bay, casting golden light across the city, Marcus had a plan. It was thorough, methodical, and completely merciless. He would watch them. He would document everything. He would wait until he understood the full scope of their betrayal. And then he would destroy them both. Not with rage. Not with violence. But with the same cold, calculated precision he'd used to build his empire. Because Marcus Ashford didn't believe in coincidences. And he didn't believe in mercy. Marcus returned to California 3 days later. He'd extended his Tokyo trip, telling Victoria and Julian that negotiations were taking longer than expected. In reality, he'd spent 72 hours assembling his team. First was Thomas Chin, a former FBI agent who now ran a private investigation firm specializing in high-net-worth divorces and corporate espionage. Thomas had a reputation for being thorough, discreet, and expensive. Marcus didn't care about the cost. Second was Rebecca Stone, a forensic accountant who'd helped Marcus navigate 2 previous acquisitions by uncovering hidden liabilities in target companies. If Julian was stealing from the company, and Marcus had to assume he was, Rebecca would find it. Third was David Park, a security contractor who specialized in covert surveillance installation. David could wire an entire house in 6 hours and leave no trace. The team was in place before Marcus's plane touched down at LAX. Victoria picked him up at the airport, driving his Tesla with the kind of casual comfort that came from 7 years of marriage. She kissed him at arrivals, asked about Tokyo, told him the children were excited to see him. She was perfect, the dutiful wife, the devoted mother, the woman who'd stood beside him at 100 corporate events with exactly the right smile. Marcus watched her perform and felt nothing. "I missed you," Victoria said as they merged onto the Pacific Coast Highway, the ocean stretching out to their left under the late afternoon sun. "Did you?" Marcus asked, his tone carefully neutral. Victoria glanced at him, something flickering in her eyes, uncertainty, perhaps guilt, though it vanished so quickly he might have imagined it. "Of course, the house feels empty when you're gone." "I'm sure Julian kept you company," Marcus said. He watched her reaction in his peripheral vision. A microsecond of tension in her jaw, her fingers tightening fractionally on the steering wheel. Then she laughed, light and easy. "He stopped by once to drop off some contracts for you to review. Stayed maybe 10 minutes. The lie was smooth, practiced. Marcus made a mental note. Subject demonstrates capability for extended deception. Assume all statements are potentially false. That was thoughtful of him, Marcus said. They drove home in comfortable silence, Victoria's hand resting on his thigh, the picture of marital contentment. Marcus looked out at the ocean and thought about patterns, about game theory, about how people always underestimated him because he didn't lead with emotion. The house in Malibu was a sprawling modern masterpiece, 6,000 square feet of glass and steel perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. Marcus had bought it 5 years ago, and Victoria had spent 2 years renovating it into something that appeared in architectural magazines. His children rushed to greet him when he entered, Emma, 6 years old, and Daniel, 9, both of them bright and eager and innocent. Marcus hugged them, listened to their stories about school and swimming lessons, and felt something twist inside his chest that might have been the closest thing to emotion he'd experienced in days. They deserved better than this. Better than a mother who was betraying their father under their own roof. That night, after the children were in bed, Marcus and Victoria sat on the deck overlooking the ocean. She'd made his favorite meal, poured his preferred wine, done everything right. She asked about Tokyo, about the biotech deal, about his plans for the next quarter. And then she said, "Julian wants to meet with you tomorrow. Something about the board meeting next week." "Of course," Marcus said. "Tell him to come by the house around 10. Victoria nodded, sipping her wine. "He's been stressed lately. I think he's worried about the Nexus acquisition." "Julian's always worried about something," Marcus said. "It's why he's good at what he does." "He values your partnership," Victoria said. "He told me once that you were the best decision he ever made." Marcus looked at his wife, really looked at her, in the soft light from the deck lanterns. She was beautiful, objectively. 38 years old, blonde, elegant, the kind of woman who looked perfect in both evening gowns and yoga pants. He'd met her at a charity gala, had been drawn to her intelligence and poise, had married her after a 6-month courtship that felt, in retrospect, more like a business negotiation than a romance. Had she ever loved him? Or had this always been a transaction? "What about you?" Marcus asked. "Was I a good decision?" Victoria turned to him, her expression soft. "Of course you were. You're brilliant, Marcus. You're everything I could have wanted." The words were right. The tone was right. Everything was perfect. Everything was a lie. "I'm glad," Marcus said, and kissed her forehead. "I'm tired. I'm going to turn in." He left her on the deck and went inside, but instead of going to the bedroom, he went to his study and locked the door. David Park had been busy. While Marcus was in Tokyo, he'd installed 14 additional cameras and audio devices throughout the house. Every room was now monitored, every conversation recorded. The system fed to a secure cloud server that only Marcus could access. Marcus opened his laptop and pulled up the feeds from the past 3 days. Day 1, 2:15 p.m., Julian's car in the driveway. Julian entering the house. Victoria greeting him in the foyer with a kiss that lasted 20 seconds. Julian's hand sliding under her shirt. Victoria's laugh, not the polite, measured laugh she used at dinner parties, but something real and uninhibited. Day 2, 11:30 a.m., Julian and Victoria in the master bedroom. Marcus turned on the audio. Julian's voice, "I can't stop thinking about you." Victoria, "Then don't. We have 3 hours before the kids get home." The sounds that followed made Marcus's jaw tighten, but he forced himself to listen. Not out of masochism, but because he needed to understand the full scope of what he was dealing with. Day 2, 2:45 p.m., Julian and Victoria on the deck, drinking wine. The camera angle captured both their faces clearly. Julian, "Do you ever feel guilty?" Victoria, "About Marcus? Should I?" Julian, "I don't know. Sometimes I think about what we're doing and—" "What we're doing is surviving," Victoria interrupted. "I married Marcus because he was safe. Because he could give me the life I wanted. But you," she leaned in, kissing him, "you're what I actually want. He's my best friend, Vic. And I'm his wife. We both made choices." Victoria's voice was cool, pragmatic. "The question is whether we're going to keep living like this, or whether we're finally going to do something about it. Meaning I'm tired of being patient. I'm tired of pretending to be in love with someone I'm not in love with. I'm tired of waiting for you to grow a spine." There was a long pause. Then Julian said, "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that there are ways to end a marriage that don't involve splitting assets." Marcus stopped the recording. He sat back in his chair, staring at the frozen image on his screen. His wife and his business partner, their heads close together, plotting something. The words hung in the air, ways to end a marriage that don't involve splitting assets. Not divorce, that something else. Marcus's mind worked through the implications with the same cold precision he applied to every problem. If they wanted him dead, and Victoria's words strongly suggested they did, then this wasn't just infidelity. This was conspiracy. This was criminal. This was leverage. He opened a new document and began typing, documenting everything he'd heard, timestamping the footage, creating a chain of evidence that would be irrefutable in court. Then he made a phone call to Thomas Chen. "I need you to investigate something," Marcus said when the investigator answered. "I need to know if my wife or my business partner have been researching anything unusual. Poisons, untraceable methods, life insurance policies. Anything that suggests planning for my death." There was a brief pause. "You think they're planning to kill you?" "I think they're planning something," Marcus said. "I need to know what." "I'll have answers in 48 hours, Thomas said. Marcus hung up and returned to the surveillance footage. He watched Julian leave the house at 3:30 p.m., watched Victoria straighten the bedroom, watched her text Marcus that she was thinking about him and couldn't wait for him to come home. The performance was flawless. But Marcus had seen behind the curtain now. He knew the truth. And he would use it to obliterate them both. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus became a ghost in his own life. He went through the motions, meetings with Julian, dinners with Victoria, bedtime stories with his children, while the surveillance system captured everything. Thomas Chen's investigation revealed disturbing patterns. Victoria had been researching heart attacks in men under 45, specifically cases that appeared stress-related but had underlying causes. She'd visited a holistic medicine clinic in Santa Monica 3 times in the past month, each time asking about supplements and their interactions with prescription medications. Julian had met twice with a life insurance broker, discussing policies that would pay out to business partners in the event of death. He'd also been in contact with a lawyer specializing in corporate succession planning. Rebecca Stone found irregularities in the company accounts, small transfers that Julian had authorized, money moving into offshore accounts in structures that were technically legal but highly suspicious. The picture came into focus with brutal clarity. They were planning to kill him, make it look natural, and inherit everything. Victoria would get the house and his personal assets. Julian would take control of the company. They'd split a fortune and live happily ever after. It was, Marcus had to admit, a decent plan. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated him. On the 15th day of surveillance, Marcus was sitting in his study when the cameras in the master bedroom captured something that changed everything. Victoria and Julian were in bed, the afternoon sun filtering through the curtains. They were talking, their voices low and intimate. "Julian, I picked it up yesterday. It's tasteless, odorless. Digoxin. It's a heart medication, but in the right doses, it causes cardiac arrest. Especially in someone with Marcus's stress levels." "Victoria, and it won't be detected?" "Not unless they're specifically looking for it." "And why would they?" "Everyone knows Marcus works himself to death. When his heart gives out, it'll be tragic but not suspicious." "How long?" "If we're careful? 3 months, maybe 4. Small doses in his coffee every morning. His heart will just give out one day. Quick, relatively painless. The perfect crime." Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I know I should feel guilty. But all I feel is relieved. Like we're finally going to be free." "We are," Julian said. "We're going to be together, Vic, really together. No more hiding. No more pretending." They kissed, and the audio captured Victoria's whispered words, "I love you. I've always loved you." Marcus turned off the recording. His hands were steady as he made 3 phone calls. One to Thomas Chen, one to Rebecca Stone, and one to a private physician who specialized in toxicology. "I need to be tested for digoxin," Marcus told the doctor. "And I need the results kept completely confidential." The test came back positive. Small amounts, not enough to cause immediate harm but definitely present in his system. They'd already started. They were already poisoning him. Marcus sat alone in his study that night, the house dark and silent around him. Downstairs, Victoria was asleep in their bed, the bed where she'd planned his murder, where she'd welcomed his would-be killer into her body, where she'd betrayed everything their marriage was supposed to represent. He thought about his children, asleep in their rooms, innocent and unaware that their mother was a monster. He thought about Julian, who would arrive tomorrow for a business meeting, who would shake Marcus's hand and call him friend while plotting his death. And he thought about what came next. Most men would go to the police immediately. Most men would confront, would rage, would demand explanations. Marcus wasn't most men. He opened his laptop and began drafting a plan. Not for confrontation. Not for revenge. For annihilation. Marcus spent the next 3 weeks being the perfect target. He drank the coffee Victoria prepared each morning, watching her stir in what she believed was his death sentence. He met with Julian for strategy sessions, discussing quarterly projections and expansion plans while his business partners smiled and schemed. He played with his children, took them to school, helped with homework, every moment documented, every interaction catalogued. And all the while, the surveillance system captured everything. The private physician had put Marcus on chelation therapy to remove the digoxin from his system while providing him with detailed medical documentation of the poisoning. Every coffee Victoria made was secretly preserved. Marcus would pour it into a sealed container after pretending to drink, each sample meticulously labeled and stored as evidence. Thomas Chen had expanded his investigation, uncovering the full scope of the conspiracy. Julian had been embezzling from the company for 8 months, moving money through shell corporations in preparation for taking control after Marcus's death. Victoria had been consulting with estate lawyers, asking hypothetical questions about inheritance and custody rights. Rebecca Stone had frozen Julian's access to key company accounts under the guise of a routine audit, a move that would protect Marcus's assets while appearing completely innocent. Everything was falling into place. But Marcus needed one more piece, Undeniable proof that they intended to kill him, captured in their own words, impossible to deny or dismiss. On the 23rd day of surveillance, he got it. Marcus had told Victoria he'd be working late at the office, a board presentation that would run until midnight. Instead, he parked 3 blocks from his house and watched the live surveillance feeds on his phone. Julian arrived at 8:47 p.m. Victoria greeted him at the door, and they went immediately to the master bedroom. Marcus watched, his face impassive, as they undressed each other with the comfortable familiarity of long-term lovers. Afterward, lying in Marcus's bed, surrounded by photos of Marcus's family, they talked. The audio was crystal clear. Julian, he's been looking tired lately. I think it's working. Victoria, he complained about chest pains yesterday. Said he thought it was stress. Julian laughed, a sound that might have been nervous or excited or both. That's exactly what we want. When it happens, everyone will say they saw it coming. He worked too hard, pushed himself too much, his heart just gave out. How much longer? Dr. Morrison thinks another month, maybe 6 weeks. We have to be careful not to accelerate too fast. Sudden death would trigger an autopsy. We want gradual deterioration, then one final cardiac event. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then, what about the children? What about them? Emma asked me yesterday why Daddy always looks so tired. What do we tell them when he's gone? Julian propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her. We tell them their father worked himself to death building an empire. We tell them we'll take care of them. We tell them that life goes on. And us. We wait a respectful amount of time, 6 months, maybe a year. Then we let it be known that we've found comfort in each other. 2 people brought together by tragedy, helping each other heal. It's a beautiful story. Victoria reached up, touching his face. I never loved him, you know. Not really. I loved what he could give me, the house, the lifestyle, the security. But you were always the one I wanted. Then why did you marry him? Because you weren't rich yet. Because Marcus was the sure thing, and you were still a gamble. Victoria's voice was matter-of-fact, almost clinical. I made the practical choice. But now we can have both, the money and the love. He trusts me completely, Julian said, and there was something almost like regret in his voice. After everything we've built together, after 15 years of partnership, he has no idea. Good, Victoria said. That's what makes this possible. His trust is our weapon. They kissed again, and then Julian said something that made Marcus's hands tighten on his phone. I saw Daniel watching us last week. Your son. He was standing in the hallway when I came out of your bedroom. Victoria sat up abruptly. What? Why didn't you tell me? I didn't think much of it at the time. But he was just standing there looking at us. And he had this expression, like he was trying to figure something out. Did he say anything? No. He just turned and went back to his room. Victoria cursed softly. We need to be more careful. If the children know. It's fine, Julian said, pulling her back down. He's 9 years old. Even if he saw something, what's he going to do? Tell his father that Mommy has a friend over? Marcus would probably thank me for keeping you company while he's traveling. They laughed together, the sound echoing through Marcus's earbuds like knives. Marcus turned off the audio and sat in his car, staring at nothing. His son had seen them. Daniel, his brilliant, perceptive 9-year-old son, had witnessed his mother's betrayal and had said nothing. The thought of what that knowledge might be doing to his child's mind made something crack in Marcus's carefully constructed emotional armor. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This wasn't just about theft or conspiracy or attempted murder. This was about his children, the only people in the world Marcus actually loved, the only people whose well-being could pierce through his ruthless pragmatism. Victoria and Julian had poisoned his coffee. They'd stolen from his company. They'd plotted his death. But bringing his children into their conspiracy, making Daniel witness their affair, forcing him to carry that knowledge alone, that was unforgivable. Marcus made a decision then, sitting in his car in the dark. This would end. So, completely. No mercy. He drove to a secure office he maintained in downtown Ellen, a space Victoria and Julian didn't know about, where he could work without surveillance or interruption. He spent the next 6 hours organizing every piece of evidence he'd gathered: video files, audio recordings, financial documents, medical reports, toxicology results. He created a comprehensive dossier that documented the affair, the embezzlement, and the attempted murder. He made multiple copies, storing them with his attorney, his accountant, and in encrypted cloud storage with instructions to release them if anything happened to him. Then he called Thomas Chin. "I need you to arrange something," Marcus said. "I need the LAPD's Financial Crimes Division and a homicide detective to be available on Thursday morning. I need my attorney present. And I need it to be absolutely airtight. No chance of a mistrial, no technicalities they can exploit. You're ready to move?" "I'm ready to end this." Marcus hung up and made one more call, to his sister, Jennifer, who lived in San Diego. "I need you to pick up Emma and Daniel from school on Thursday and take them to your house," he said without preamble. "Tell them it's a surprise visit, that you miss them. Keep them there until I call you." "Marcus, what's going on?" "Just trust me. Please. I need the children away from the house on Thursday." Jennifer agreed, her voice worried but trusting. Marcus returned home at 2:47 a.m. Victoria was asleep, the picture of innocence. He stood in the bedroom doorway for a long moment, watching her, thinking about the woman she'd been when they married, or, more accurately, the woman she'd pretended to be. Then he went to his study and began drafting the final phase of his plan. Thursday morning dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect Southern California day that usually appeared in tourism brochures. Marcus woke early, went through his normal routine, and kissed his children goodbye as Jennifer picked them up for their surprise visit. Victoria was in the kitchen when he came downstairs, preparing his coffee with the poison digoxin she believed was slowly killing him. "Morning," she said brightly, handing him the mug. "You look tired. Maybe you should take the day off." "I'm fine," Marcus said, accepting the coffee and setting it aside. "Actually, I was thinking we should have Julian over for dinner tonight. The three of us. I have some business news to discuss." Victoria's expression flickered, surprise, then calculation, then false enthusiasm. "That sounds great. I'll make his favorite." "Perfect," Marcus said, and kissed her cheek. "See you tonight." He left for the office, dumping the poisoned coffee in a sealed container in his car. At 4:47 p.m., Marcus sent a text to both Victoria and Julian, "Running late. Come to the house around 7? We'll have dinner and talk business." They both agreed immediately. At 6:30 p.m., 3 unmarked police cars parked discreetly down the street from Marcus's house. Detective Sarah Walsh from Homicide and Agent David Torres from Financial Crimes were briefed by Thomas Chin in one of the vehicles. "Mr. Ashford will invite them inside," Thomas explained. "Once they're both present, he'll confront them with the evidence. Your job is to be ready if they try to run or destroy evidence." At 6:58 p.m., Julian's car pulled into the driveway. At 7 p.m. exactly, Marcus opened the door. Julian stepped into the house with the easy confidence of someone who believed he was among friends. He was wearing casual clothes, designer jeans and a button-down shirt, and carrying a bottle of wine. "Marcus, good to see you, man." Julian handed him the wine and pulled him into a brief hug. "Victoria said you have news?" "I do," Marcus said, his voice carefully neutral. "Come in." Victoria's in the living room. They walked through the house together, Julian making casual conversation about a client meeting he'd had that afternoon. Marcus responded with appropriate comments, his performance flawless. Victoria was sitting on the couch, looking perfect in a casual dress. She smiled when they entered, standing to kiss Julian's cheek in what might have looked like a friendly greeting if Marcus hadn't watched them fuck in this very room 2 days ago. "Wine?" Victoria asked, playing the hostess. "Not yet." Marcus said. "Sit down. Both of you." Something in his tone made them pause. Julian's smile faltered slightly. Victoria's eyes narrowed, reading some shift in Marcus's demeanor that she couldn't quite place. They sat. Marcus remained standing, looking down at them both. For a moment, the house was completely silent except for the distant sound of waves crashing against the cliff below. "I want to tell you both a story," Marcus said finally. It's about trust, about partnership, about the mistakes people make when they underestimate someone. Julian leaned forward slightly. Marcus, what's? 3 weeks ago, Marcus interrupted, his voice cold and precise. I was in Tokyo when I received a notification from my home security system. A motion alert from the hallway outside my bedroom. At 2:47 in the morning, California time. The color drained from Victoria's face. At first, I thought it must be a mistake, Marcus continued. Some glitch in the system. Because what I was seeing was impossible. My wife, in our bedroom doorway, kissing my business partner, my best friend, the godfather to my children. Julian stood up abruptly. Marcus, listen. Sit down. The words cracked like a whip, and something in Marcus's expression made Julian sink back onto the couch. Marcus picked up a remote from the side table and pointed it at the television mounted on the wall. The screen flickered to life. I want you to watch something, Marcus said. The video began to play. High-definition footage from the bedroom camera, time-stamped and dated. Victoria and Julian in bed together, their voices crystal clear through the sound system. Julian's recorded voice. I picked it up yesterday. It's tasteless, odorless. Digoxin. It's a heart medication, but in the right doses, it causes cardiac arrest. Victoria's face went white. She stood, shaking her head. Marcus, that's not. This is out of context. Context. Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of absolute fury held in check by iron control. What context makes plotting to murder your husband acceptable, Victoria? The video continued playing. Their discussion of timelines, of making it look natural, of the life they'd build together after Marcus was dead. Every damning word, every casual reference to his death, laid bare in their own voices. Julian was shaking his head, his face ashen. We were just talking, we didn't mean. Marcus pulled out his phone and tapped a few buttons. The television screen changed to show financial records, highlighted transactions, documents showing Julian's embezzlement. You've stolen $3.2 million from our company over the past 8 months, Marcus said. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Or did you just assume I'd be dead before the audit caught you? He tapped again, and the screen showed medical reports. Toxicology results from 2 weeks ago. Digoxin in my bloodstream. Not a therapeutic dose, a poisoning dose. Building up slowly, day by day, in the coffee my wife so lovingly prepared every morning. Victoria was crying now, mascara streaming down her face. Please, Marcus. Please. I can explain. Explain what? Marcus's voice was arctic. Explain that you never loved me? That you married me for money and security while pining for him? I heard that conversation too. I heard all of it, Victoria. Every word. Every moment. Every lie. Julian found his voice, desperate now. We'll leave. Right now. We'll disappear, you'll never see us again. Just let us go, Marcus. Please. Marcus looked at him, really looked at him, for a long moment. Let you go? So you can run to some other city, start over, spend the money you stole from me? So you can laugh about how you almost killed Marcus Ashford but he was too weak to do anything about it. He shook his head slowly. No. I don't think so. Marcus walked to the front door and opened it. Detective Sarah Walsh stepped inside, followed by Agent David Torres and 4 uniformed officers. Detective Walsh, Agent Torres, Marcus said calmly. Thank you for coming. I believe you'll find all the evidence you need on the hard drives Thomas provided. Financial records of the embezzlement. Video and audio evidence of conspiracy to commit murder. Toxicology reports confirming I've been poisoned. And approximately 57 samples of coffee, each containing digoxin, each one Victoria prepared for me with intent to kill. Julian lunged toward the back door. 2 officers intercepted him before he'd taken 3 steps. Victoria collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. My children, Marcus, please, my children. Your children? Marcus's voice could have cut glass. You mean the children you were prepared to orphan? The children you were going to traumatize by killing their father? Daniel, our 9-year-old son, saw you with Julian. He saw you kissing in the hallway and said nothing because he didn't know what to do with that information. You made our child complicit in your betrayal." He turned to Detective Walsh. "They're all yours." The arrests happened quickly. Miranda rights were read. Handcuffs clicked into place. Julian was silent now, his face slack with shock. Victoria kept crying, kept pleading, kept trying to catch Marcus's eye. Marcus watched it all with no expression whatsoever. As they were being led out, Julian stopped in the doorway, turning back to look at Marcus. 15 years, he said, his voice broken. "We built this company together. Doesn't that mean anything?" Marcus met his eyes. "Did. But you made a choice when you decided to steal from me, to sleep with my wife, to plot my death. You chose betrayal. Now you get to live with the consequences." "I'm sorry," Julian whispered. "No," Marcus said. "You're not. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference." The police led them away. The house fell silent. Marcus stood in his living room, surrounded by the wreckage of his life, the furniture Victoria had chosen, the artwork Julian had helped him select, the photographs of a family that had been a lie. He thought about calling his children, but they were safe with Jennifer. They'd have questions eventually, and he'd have to explain in terms they could understand. But for now, they were protected, and that was what mattered. Thomas Chin appeared in the doorway. "You did the right thing." "Did I?" Marcus asked, his voice empty. "They tried to kill you, Marcus. They're going to prison for a long time. Conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, aggravated assault, embezzlement. The DA thinks they'll take a plea deal, but even with that, they're looking at 20 years minimum." Marcus nodded slowly. "And the company?" "Rebecca has frozen all of Julian's assets. His shares will be seized as part of the restitution. You'll maintain full control." "And Victoria?" "She'll lose everything in the divorce. The prenup holds. She gets nothing. And with the criminal charges, she'll lose custody. The children are yours." Marcus walked to the window, looking out at the ocean. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. "I built everything on trust," he said quietly. "I trusted Julian with my business. I trusted Victoria with my heart. I trusted them both with my life. And they betrayed that trust," Thomas said. "But you were smart enough to verify. That's what saved you." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "It doesn't feel like salvation," he finally said. Thomas left him alone after that. Marcus spent the night in his study, going through files, making calls to board members, preparing for the chaos that would follow when this became public. The media would have a field day. Billionaire almost murdered by wife and business partner, a story of betrayal and conspiracy that would dominate headlines for weeks. But Marcus would weather it. He always did. Near dawn his phone rang. It was Jennifer. "The news is everywhere," she said. "Marcus, what happened?" "I'll explain later." "How are the children?" "Confused. They know something's wrong." "Tell them I love them," Marcus said. "Tell them I'll see them tomorrow. And tell them that everything's going to be okay." He hung up and returned to the window. The sun was rising now, casting golden light across the Pacific. A new day. A new beginning. Marcus Ashford had lost his wife, his business partner, and his faith in human nature. But he'd saved his life, protected his children, and preserved his empire. In the ruthless calculus he used to measure success, that counted as a win, even if it felt like devastation. 3 months later, Marcus stood in his study, reviewing quarterly reports. The company had weathered the scandal. Stock prices had dipped initially but recovered once investors realized Marcus remained in complete control. Julian's shares had been redistributed, new partners brought in, and Ashford Technologies was stronger than ever. The legal proceedings had been swift. Julian and Victoria had both taken plea deals when confronted with the overwhelming evidence Marcus had compiled. Julian received 23 years for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and embezzlement. Victoria received 18 years on similar charges. The divorce was finalized without contest. Marcus had full custody of Emma and Daniel. The children were in therapy, working through the trauma of learning that their mother had tried to kill their father. Daniel, in particular, had struggled with guilt over not saying something when he'd witnessed the affair. Marcus had spent hours with him, explaining that none of this was his fault, that adults bore responsibility for their own choices. Slowly, painfully, they were healing. Marcus looked around his study, the same room where he'd first discovered the betrayal, where he'd plotted his revenge, where he'd methodically destroyed two people who'd tried to destroy him. He felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not vindication. Not even relief. Just emptiness. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Daddy, when are you coming home? Daniel and I miss you." Marcus smiled. A small, genuine expression that would have surprised anyone who knew him in business. "On my way," he typed back. "Love you both." He gathered his things and headed for the door. Outside, the California sun was setting over the ocean, painting the world in shades of gold. Marcus drove home to his children, to the house that was slowly becoming a home again rather than a crime scene, to the life he was rebuilding from the ashes of betrayal. He'd learned lessons he'd never forget. Trust was a weapon others could use against you. Love could be a performance masking hatred. The people closest to you could be the most dangerous. But he'd also learned something else, something that surprised him. Despite the betrayal, despite the cruelty, despite everything that had happened, there were still things worth protecting. His children. His integrity. His refusal to let others' evil turn him into something worse than they were. Marcus Ashford had built an empire on ruthlessness. But he would rebuild his life on something different. Not trust, he would never be that naive again. But on vigilance. On love for the few who deserved it. On the iron will to protect what mattered at any cost. He pulled into his driveway and saw Emma and Daniel waiting at the window, their faces lighting up when they saw him. And for the first time in 3 months, Marcus felt something that might have been hope. Not for himself. He was beyond that. But for them. For his children, who could still believe in goodness, who could still love without calculation, who could still trust in a future that wasn't built on betrayal. Marcus got out of the car and walked to his front door. His children ran to meet him, and he knelt down, pulling them both into a hug that was fierce and protective and real. "I love you both," he said. "More than anything in the world." "We love you too, Daddy," Emma whispered. Daniel said nothing, just held on tight. And in that moment, kneeling in his foyer with his children in his arms, Marcus made a silent promise. He would never let anyone hurt them again. He would never be vulnerable again. He would never, ever mistake performance for reality. The empire would continue. The wealth would grow. The success would compound. But Marcus Ashford, the man who'd trusted and been betrayed, was gone. In his place was someone harder, colder, more dangerous. Someone who'd learned that survival meant never dropping your guard. Someone who'd weaponized their pain into power. Someone who would never make the same mistake twice. Marcus stood, taking his children's hands, and walked into his house. The door closed behind them with a decisive click. The surveillance cameras were still running. They always would be. Because Marcus Ashford no longer believed in coincidences. And he would never believe in trust again. What would you have done in Marcus's position? Would you have had the cold, calculated control to gather months of evidence while being slowly poisoned? Or would rage have won out? This story isn't just about one man's betrayal, it's about the devastating reality that the people we trust most can be the ones planning our destruction. Marcus's story reminds us that survival sometimes requires becoming someone harder, someone willing to weaponize truth against those who thought they were untouchable. Think about it. His wife looked him in the eyes every day while putting poison in his coffee. His best friend shook his hand while stealing millions. They plotted his death in his own bed, under his own roof, around his own children. And they almost got away with it, because trust made him vulnerable. If this story made your blood boil, if it made you think about the people you trust, if it reminded you that vigilance isn't paranoia, it's survival, then I need you to do 3 things. First, smash that like button. Let the algorithm know that stories of calculated justice matter. That we're tired of the naive getting destroyed while the schemers walk free. Second, comment below with calculated justice if you think Marcus did the right thing, or tell me what you would have done differently. Should he have confronted them immediately? Should he have been even more ruthless? Your perspective matters, and I want to hear it. Third, subscribe and hit that notification bell. This channel is dedicated to stories where justice isn't just served, it's executed with precision. Where the underestimated become unstoppable. Where betrayers face consequences they never saw coming. We're building a community of people who understand that being smart is more powerful than being emotional, that evidence is more devastating than anger, and that the best revenge is total annihilation served cold. Don't let this be just another video you scroll past. Join us. Stand with those who refuse to be victims. Be part of a community that believes calculated justice is the only real justice. Drop that like, leave that comment, hit subscribe. Because the next story might be exactly what you need to hear. Justice isn't loud. It's patient, precise, and absolutely merciless. And it always wins.